Hey there, fellow streakers. Jamie and I are excited to have with us a very special guest. This guest was at the origins of the streaking book and of streaking altogether. He is a Ironman triathlete. He's been in the World Championships 2 times. He's also competed in Ironmans before that, one in St. George and one in Florida. He also has been a score of other races and other things. He is a periodontist. And streakers, if you have read the book, you know a little bit more about who this person might be. He's owned Mountaintop Periodontist for 22 years. We are so excited to have him. He's been married for 28 years and has 4 children. Streakers, let's welcome to the show Dr. Adam Weaver, and let's start streaking. Dr. Weaver, is it all right if I call you Adam? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Please do.
It is so good to have you. We are so excited. Thanks so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to the conversation that we have today.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it.
So, where we'd like to start, I think we need a little bit of an introduction as far as why we're having you on the show and what it was. So, I met Dr. Weaver and Adam, and he was the one that saved my teeth, basically. And the periodontist, I have very bad periodontal disease, or did. And he looked in my mouth and saw gold mine. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But he did save my teeth. And his dental hygienist was the one that suggested that flossing your gums is like exercising. And if you do it a couple of times a day, then your gums will be healthy. Now, I don't know if you knew that she suggested this, but she suggested this. And I went home, and it was like 3 days after I was getting ready for our 300th streaking run. So we'd been streaking for 300 days on running or walking at least 1 mile every day.
And we'd been able to keep it for like 300 plus days.
Yeah. And I was talking to myself in the mirror because Adam, that I did not floss my teeth. I hated it, in fact, with a capital HATE.
I know.
And that is like the number one thing you and your hygienist would always say, look, Jeff, if you don't want another expensive surgery, you got to at least floss. You can brush, and you do, but you got to floss.
Right.
And so I was looking in the mirror, and I said to myself, what is your problem? And at that moment, I heard your dental hygienist voice say to me, Jeff, you're flossing your teeth is like exercising your gums. And I was dressed in my workout clothes to go on my 300th run. And all of a sudden it hit me, why don't you just set a streak to floss your teeth? And you'll be happy to know, and I always feel like when I'm talking about flossing, I need to call you Dr. Weaver, because I always feel like I'm in the little kid's office. I'm like, I'm sorry, Dr. Weaver. But you'll be happy to know 2,503 days ago is when that was.
Wow. That is so awesome.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It really is.
All inspired by you, my friend. Thank you.
Wow. That is so awesome. I love it.
So the question I want to start with is let's go back a little bit as far as what led you down. There's so many interesting facets of your life. First of all, what led you down the road of periodontist, and then we'll talk about your Ironmans, because both of those things are really fascinating.
You bet. So I knew from the time I was young, actually, that I wanted to be a doctor of some sort. And I made a decision after I served a 2-year mission for my church. I made a decision to go visit different doctors' offices. And long story short, the dentist had the best life. So, not only was he a businessman, but he had kind of the best life. And I said, well, that's what I want. So I made a decision right away to go ahead and go towards dental school. And I did. I got into dental school. And then while I was in dental school, I realized very early that I enjoyed surgery more than I did traditional dentistry. I didn't really like what they call drill, fill, and bill. Didn't really love that, but I did love doing surgery. I liked all the surgical aspects. So I kind of dove into the different specialties and found that, to me, periodontics had the best options as far as different surgeries. So then I applied to different periodontal residencies. I got into a residency in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and at Marquette University. and I ended up going there. And it was a 3-year program. And so from 1997 to 2000, I did my residency. And then in 2000, I bought my practice. I came out and I just bought a practice that was from an existing doctor named Dr. McDonald. And that's where it started.
Wow. And periodontics is different in the sense that from just regular dentistry because of the surgery. I'm sure there's other things as well, and please don't take my ignorant view of it as but educate us a little bit more on that. What's the difference between it?
Yeah, so perio means around, and so it's everything surrounding the teeth. So the gum and the bone that surround the teeth is my specialty. And so I focus on, the quality and health of the bone and the gum tissue surrounding teeth. And unfortunately that requires surgery most of the time to correct problems that have taken place. Either I'm doing bone grafting or gum grafting, things like that to correct problems associated with that loss, with the loss of bone or gum surrounding teeth.
Yeah.
What's wait, as you look back over the years of your practice, like what has been the most intense surgery that you've had to do? Like what are the things that you're like, okay, that one?
It's mine.
No.
It's
I
when
think you're pretty
it's when you had to
standard.
peel back the gums, expose my entire face. No.
Yeah, that is probably my bread and butter surgery. So
Okay.
I do a lot of that surgery. In fact, I would say I do that more than anything, the type of surgery that maybe you had done, Jeff. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the most part, probably the most intense surgeries have to do with what's called sinus augmentations,
Hmm.
where if people are missing bone in the posterior of their upper jaw, they need to have that portion of their jaw rebuilt to place implants. And so, and unfortunately, there's a giant hole that we all have just below our eye in this area of our cheek. That's our sinus, where our sinus sits. It's just a giant cavity within our head. And so what happens is many times I have to go into that sinus and make what's called a window, and then open that up and lift the sinus floor up, and then pack bone into that area. So
Wow.
Wow. So
yeah,
that is intense.
Is that like a several step surgery or is it just a
no,
one time? Yeah.
it's usually a one-step deal that we can do, and then you have to wait, let that bone heal, which usually takes 6 to 8 months, and then before you can then place implants.
An
So,
implant in there.
yeah.
Wow.
All right. So we need to talk to us about the benefits of flossing because that's really what saved you saved my teeth and then flossing was something that was quite significant.
Yeah, so I tell, and it's awesome that my hygienist did say that, because that's part of the training for my hygienist, is talking about the importance of flossing on a regular basis. And that we have a saying that, I know everybody's heard this, but you only floss the teeth you want to keep.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's true because I lost the one that I wasn't flossing. Everything else.
yeah. It's just so the key is being able to use floss on a consistent basis to get in the areas where your toothbrush just cannot reach.
Hmm.
So it's extremely important. Once a day at least is perfect. And so if you can get do your flossing once a day, it will help you keep your teeth. Absolutely, it will.
I'm an overachiever.
You're doing it twice
I
a
do it
day.
twice in
I
the morning
know.
and at night.
Which is awesome. There is no problem with doing it twice. We would love it if people would just do it at least once.
At
And so,
least once.
So it's
yeah,
interesting because when your hygienist said that to me, and after the couple of surgeries that you had performed on my teeth,
yeah,
it is amazing the difference of the streak of flossing every single day. I mean,
oh yeah.
the build up and everything else is just not there anymore because of the flossing.
Well, people have this misunderstanding about plaque. In fact, every single day, it's kind of funny the stories that I get as I get new patients that'll come into my office, and I'll do their exam. And almost all those patients come from a general dentist that has probably just cleaned their teeth. And in fact, I would say 90% of my patients that are new patients had just within the past month or so been into their dentist and had their teeth cleaned. And so I'll check and I'll say, I'm noticing quite a bit of plaque buildup. And they'll say, that's impossible. I just got my teeth cleaned. That is almost always what I hear. And I say, well, and this is my story I always give them. I say, let's say I cleaned your teeth right now. Okay. By tonight, you will already have millions of bacteria. Okay. Millions, not just thousands, but millions of bacteria by tonight.
Wow.
Now, if you then don't brush, let's say you're tired and you decide, I'm not going to brush or I'm not going to floss my teeth tonight. By tomorrow morning, you now have billions of bacteria. By tomorrow morning, 24 hours after you've had your teeth cleaned. When you get your teeth cleaned, the primary reason to get your teeth cleaned is to actually get tartar, the harder material that's built up on our teeth, to get it scraped off your teeth, because traditional brushing and even flossing, unless you're flossing consistently, if you floss consistently, you can keep that tartar from accumulating to great extents. And that's the reason that you floss regularly. If you miss even a day or two with the salivary content that's flowing from right underneath our tongues, you will start to build up tartar within 24 hours too. And so that's why flossing on a consistent basis will keep that keep that tartar from accumulating.
Are you just feeling proud of yourself right now?
I'm feeling so happy right now. I mean, because what you say, and it's amazing how that applies to life, in the sense of how quickly things can go awry if you're not doing it every single day.
Right.
But how imperceptible the everyday seems to be in making a difference. Like, it doesn't seem like a big deal.
Doesn't seem like you have billions of bacteria in your mouth.
I know. As you were talking, I'm like, don't go floss and don't go brush your teeth right now, even though I want to. Maybe I'll go brush my teeth right now and floss again.
Yeah, it is extremely interesting. I just, in a way, obviously it's very frustrating as a dentist, because people have this misconception. They're like, oh, I go get my teeth cleaned twice a year, or even 4 times a year. For some patients that have gum disease, they need 4 times a year. And yet they have this perception that somehow is curing them. But it's really the daily routine that will keep them from having surgery or losing teeth. It's that daily, not the quarterly. Quarterly helps for sure, or the once a year or twice a year will help. But it's the daily that actually saves people and saves their teeth.
You hear that, streakers? Daily. That means a streak every single day. That's fantastic. Right. So that's what we'll have to set up. So in the Streaking app, we'll have to get your office, Mountaintop Periodontics, set up as a group in the Streaking app, and then we'll just have a recommended streak of adopt floss at least 1 time a day or floss at least 2 times a day as the recommended streak.
Absolutely. That's great. I love it.
Well, that leads us to the question that as you've been in periodontics and you've done all this, you also have this other passion, which has been an Ironman triathlete. Yeah. Tell us a little bit, how did that start? What got you interested in it? And what does it take to become an Ironman triathlete?
So I'll kind of go back a little bit, because there's a lot of build to, you don't become an Ironman triathlete like right away. Like, you can do a triathlon for sure, but to do an Ironman is definitely a different beast. And so there was a build to that. So it goes along with what you're saying with the streaking, because if you build up certain strengths or streaks in your life, then being able to do an Ironman becomes possible. So it's other streaks that lead to then the opportunity. And so it all started, actually, it goes way back. And it actually goes to where you and I saw each other again for a while, for the first time in a while, at the Boulder.
At the Boulder, really?
Running, yeah.
10K race that's done every Memorial Day in May. And starting in 1987, when I was a junior in high school, my dad said, hey, this Boulder thing down in Boulder, we lived in Fort Collins, but my dad said, down in Boulder, they do this race, this 10K, let's sign up and let's go do it. And we did. And it was just a great experience. We didn't do it to win or.
Now, had you run before that, or had your dad been in physical fitness before that? Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. And in fact, my dad, a lot of credit goes to my dad. My dad, from the time I was young, he likes to tell this story, and actually it just came to my mind. I totally forgot about it until just now. And that is, in my church, there was a program when I was 12 years old that was only adopted for like a year or two. And it was a physical fitness program where you had to streak, where it was a poster and you could fill in. I'm sorry for I'm getting these little texts. Sorry about that.
Sure.
Anyway, there was a poster and you would fill it in. And the goal was to do some kind of exercise every day. And so my dad said, let's do this. And so we started this when I was, I think, 11 years old, and we would run. And it started out where my dad and I would run really close together, and it was great. And then we did it every single day, and we did the same route every day, where people actually in our neighborhood would get to see us. And it got to the point where I was better. I was a little bit faster than my dad. And it was funny because my dad likes to tell the story of an old man that would say, I don't know if you'll ever catch him, so far up ahead. But so it started then. My dad really made it a point that we needed to be physically active, and that it would be helpful in our actual spiritual strength, our temporal strength, just kind of make ourselves stronger if we were active. And then to make it more palatable and easier to want to do it, he would set up different goals, and he would say, we're going to do this race. And so we prepare for that race as if that was, the reason we were doing our streaking of running is so that we could get to the point where we could actually race in a race. And I was also a wrestler. I'm a short guy, and wrestling was a big deal in my life. And he said, part of being able to keep your weight down and being able to be a good wrestler would be to run consistently. So from the time I was about 11 years old, I was very consistent with running primarily.
Wow, that's great.
And then my dad found that Boulder, and we did it in 1987. And then again in 1988, when I graduated from high school, he said, I tell you what, you do your graduation. It was graduation weekend. And I think I graduated on a Saturday. And then Monday, Memorial Day, was the Boulder, and we went and did the Boulder. And I still remember it. We finished the Boulder and we drove to Moab, and we went mountain biking for a couple of days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was like, this is great. As a senior in high school, I got to hang out with my dad. And then I also, we got to do these active things and see some amazing things. And we did the Boulder together, of course, and all this stuff. So all of it was great. And so and that started it. And I said, so we did it 2 years in a row. And then I was going to go off to college. And I did. I went off to college.
Now, had you heard about triathlons at this point in time or not yet? Okay.
Yeah, I had not gone into it, but I then did it, the Boulder again, 1989, 1 month before I left for a 2-year mission. So then I missed doing the Boulder for 2 years.
And where did you serve your mission?
I served in Paraguay, in South America.
Paraguay. Wonderful. Okay.
And then when I got back from my mission, started again, and we did the Boulder then every single year. Well, then my dad kind of put it in my mind, and I was a big proponent of doing some kind of physical activity or big goal each year. And so the Boulder was just kind of then became part of that. And part of it was that in the Boulder, and anybody that's done it knows that there's waves, and there's qualification waves. And so I set a goal that I was going to get to the A wave.
Wow. So to
be in the A wave, you're running, fast.
What is it? What isn't A wave like a 5? Is it a sub 5 or is it a 5?
No, it's like 5s. So you're running 5, I think you can get in with like a 5:30 even.
A 5:30 mile.
5:30 mile.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you had to kind of get to that point, and then you could be in the A wave, the elite A wave, and you kind of feel cool, of course, you get to walk past everybody, and you got that A on your bib, and everybody knows that the only way you're there is if you've qualified for it. So that was a big goal for me, and I did that. I worked my way up till I was in the A wave, and then and kept running it. So, but anyways, so then I got married, and a lot of different things happened in my life. And by the time I got married, I said, you know what, I want to do something different with this. And it was in 2000 that I then set a goal to do, it was the first triathlon I did was the Loveland Lake to Lake triathlon. So it's in Loveland, Colorado.
Yeah.
And it's this, they call it lake to lake because you start at the swim at this Loveland Lake, and then you ride your bike up to Horsetooth Lake and around there, and then back down into Loveland before you circle Loveland Lake with a run. And that was my first triathlon. So I did that and I was hooked. I was
Loved it.
That was it right there. Now, had you
Mhm.
swam? Had you done much swimming before this time? No.
No. So that was part of it. I had to then get into a streak of learning how to swim and then swimming daily.
Right.
And I got into this whole swimming. I was not a good swimmer by any means, but I started it, and with consistency, I got better and was able to do it. And I didn't shatter any records when I did that first race at all, but I loved it. I just loved how physically fit I was. I liked the people that I was around were all fit. It was a good environment. I loved it. I just was hooked. And from that time on, then I started making different goals within triathlon till I got to the point where I felt like, you know what, now I'm going to try to get into the Ironman. And it was an 8-year process to get into the Ironman. My first Ironman was in 2008. And I competed in multiple triathlons, before I got to
Wow.
compete. And it was actually 2006, I believe, that I did. I think it was 2006. And I did the Ironman Florida. Actually, it was 6 years. So I did Ironman Florida. That was my first one I did. And
Now, just for everyone who isn't familiar with an Ironman, give us the specifications for an actual Ironman as far as what you have to be able to do.
Yeah, so it's a 2.4-mile swim, and then a 112-mile bike, and then a marathon, a 26.2-mile run.
Oh my goodness.
It's just amazing.
I mean, what 8 years to prepare for that. I can see why now. I mean, to have all three of those things. And what's the typical, there's not a typical time, but how much time does that take to go from start to finish?
So yeah, it varies.
You're right.
And first of all, let me just say that I think anybody that does an Ironman is great. And so there's not like a time that I would say is a bad time, really, because just getting out there and finishing it.
And finishing is amazing. Yeah.
And so I really do believe that. But you're considered kind of a top tier athlete if you're at 9 hours or below. It would be kind of where you need to be.
Okay. So 9 hours. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you first started, are there more people that are doing it as you've been doing it over the years? Has it picked up in interest of people doing it, or is it a sport that there's still not a ton of people that are doing? Because that's a huge amount of stamina that you have to do to complete an Ironman.
No, it's become very big. So yeah, in fact, it's become so competitive that it's very difficult even to get sometimes even a race entry into some of the minor races.
Oh, really? Okay. So now it's even harder to get into the smaller races because more and more people are doing it.
Oh yeah. It's very, very popular.
So what does a training day look like, or training week actually look like when you're prepping for an Ironman? So once you've got up to the level of being able to do the swim, do the bike, do the run, now you've got to train for that. So you have to qualify for the World Championships, right, is what you said. And what does a training week look like?
So it varies for sure. And you have to go, first of all, it is consistency. You have to be extremely consistent. No matter what, you're doing something each day, but you don't do all three disciplines every day. So typically, there are occasions where you definitely do, but for the most part, what you'll do is and I built into my training what I call a lot of bricks. Bricks are bike runs where you bike for a certain amount of time and then you'll run for a certain amount of time. And a lot of times I would be heavy on my bike rides and then be lighter on my run. And then other times I'd be very light on my bike rides and do heavy runs. And, but a typical week was about 20 hours of training in a week. So that's pretty typical.
Part-time job.
Yeah.
Part-time job. And I didn't work out on Sundays. And so I would balance about 20 hours of training with over 6 days, 6 days of the week.
So
all while you're running your practice. I mean, that's
all while I was running my practice.
Yeah.
So you're training 3 to 4 hours a day.
Correct.
Okay.
Almost every single day. And in fact, I did pretty much every day.
Every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's no
skipping. You were doing it to get that happening. Yeah.
Yeah. But it does become almost like an addiction, because you do, and I find this with a lot of things in my life where I'll do it so consistently that then if I miss, if I don't do something, I feel guilty, or it's like, wow,
I got to go do this.
Yeah. And so that drove me a lot to do it. But I think the thing that made Ironman training better than like running, for example, just running, was the fact that you have different things. You could go for a swim. Like if I don't feel for like a run, okay, today I'm going to swim longer, or I'm going to ride my bike longer. And I built into my training even some mountain biking. I did a lot of mountain biking on top, or because I was tired of being on the road. And so I would start to mountain bike and try to do different things to kind of vary a little bit, even within the variable of training sports. Yeah.
Would you train in a swimming pool or open lakes mostly?
Both. So you have to do a little bit of both. Yeah.
Okay.
I would most of my training for sure in a pool.
Okay.
But then once to twice a week, I would go and do open water swimming.
Wow.
That's amazing.
All right. So tell us about qualifying for the World Championship. What was that race, and what did it feel like when you knew you had qualified?
Yeah. So the first time that I qualified, I actually qualified at the Hawaii 70.3. 70.3 is half the distance of what you hear, the 140.6, which is 140.6 is the total mileage of an Ironman. So there was a Hawaii 70.3 that was held on half of the World Championship course in Hawaii. And I did that in May. It was May of 2008 that I did that. And I ended up you have to place basically in your top one or two in your age group to then qualify at that race. Some of the other Ironman qualifiers, you have more qualification. There's more people that qualify, but in the 70.3s, it was just one or two. And
okay, I see. So if you're not doing the full thing,
you've got to be the best at the half.
Got it.
So I had really dialed it in that year. I had got a coach, thanks to my wife. My wife was awesome. And
it was the Christmas gift, right? I mean,
yeah. So I got a Christmas gift, and it was the December of 2007. My wife gave me the Christmas gift of hiring a coach, and then the entry into the Hawaii 70.3.
How did you go about finding your coach?
So it was, as I had raced over all these years, I had seen certain athletes that were, I thought, phenomenal, and most of them in my age group. So I'd see these people that were competing within my own age group, and they'd beat me, or and I'd be like, oh, and so like you say, if you can't beat them, join them, right? And so I talk to these athletes, and I'd be like, what did you do? And they'd say, well, I hired this coach. Anyways, and I'd found a guy. My biggest thing was I wanted somebody that had kind of been there. And so I hired a coach actually out of Montana. His name was Jay Marsh. His name is Jay Marshall. And Jay had been, he had made all the he'd kind of done the same thing I did, except for that he'd gone to the point where he turned pro. He turned a pro triathlete, and had been very competitive. And he was kind of an ornery guy, not very, he never sugarcoated anything. And that was kind of the guy that I knew that's kind of the personality that I needed, because he would tell me exactly how he felt about what I was doing.
What you were doing.
Yeah. And so I hired him on, and it was amazing. He totally turned me around. I was a good athlete for sure, and then I turned into definitely a much better athlete. So,
and what was it that he helped you to be a much better athlete? Was it diet? Was it exercise? Was it regimen? What was it that kind of moved you to that next level?
Yeah, so he was a big believer in what's called lactic threshold.
Mm.
And so that's the point at which your body starts building too much lactic acid. And so he would do these tests where he would draw my blood while I was working out. Usually it was on a treadmill or on my trainer in the basement. And he would come in and he would build me up. And then, anyways, he did this test, did test what's called lactic threshold. And basically, what it was is he would find that point that you could go and kind of go all day riding or running, so that you didn't build up so much lactic acid that you would then, bunk or fall off.
Wow.
And so he had me dialed in where I knew exactly, how fast I could run, and how much power I could use on my bike before I would then die off. And so literally it was all scientific. While I was riding my bike, instead of looking how fast I was going or even paying attention to other athletes around me, I was literally focused on my power. And if I let my power go up too high, I knew I was going to bonk. And so I didn't do it. I just stayed right in that zone and I never went above it. And if I he basically told me that. He says, if you don't go above this number, then you will be fine. You will race and you'll do great and your times will be amazing. And I just believed it and I did it and it worked like a charm.
Is that fascinating?
Yeah, that's totally fascinating because I look at it and I think how amazing to be able to find what your body can do, but
Right.
then even more amazing to be able to have the confidence that you're like, I know exactly what I need to do. I'm not going to do more. I'm not going to do less. I'm going to
I
do
mean, that takes
this.
some discipline right
Yes.
there, especially when people are either passing you or you're
Yeah.
passing
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And not trusting how you feel, but trusting that number where you're like, this is the
Oh, yeah.
plan and I'm following it.
And the hardest part with Ironman is it's so mental because it's such a long race.
Yeah.
And so what I found was that at 50 miles, for example, into the bike, where you're just not even to the halfway mark even yet, it's mental. You're going, oh my goodness, I'm at 50 miles. I still have, you know, what is that?
62
62.5
miles.
62
Yes.
miles left of riding. And I've got these people passing me and I feel fit. Usually you're feeling, okay, so I'm feeling fit. People are passing me and I'm focused on this number. It's literally, I'm just looking at this number and I'm just going, is this going to work? And so it was very hard, especially when you're competing because you do want to just push it, and you feel like, oh, these guys that just passed me, I could totally hang with them.
Yeah.
I could, but I knew that if I hung with them, then I was going to pay for it later, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So can you through training can you move your lactic zone to a better number? Is that kind of the idea as you're moving your lactic zone or whatever it's called?
Yep. So in January of 2008, for example, he did my first lactic threshold test. And then he said, we're going to check you again in 6 weeks. We're going to do this training and we're going to do it in 6 weeks. And it had gotten better and I'd gotten more speed. And then we tested again. He set a new point and he said, okay, here's where you're at. And we did that every 6 weeks. And then we got to the beginning of May, basically the month before, where he said, this is where we're going to set your lactic threshold. And this is your power and this is your run. And you're going to stay with that. And then he tapered me into the Ironman 70.3 and it worked
Did it
perfect.
just work beautifully? I mean, so you
Perfect.
stuck with that number. You were
Oh,
just absolutely dog on a bone on that number.
oh yeah. I didn't move at all. I stuck right with it and it worked like a charm.
So
Most
when you
you don't see it till the run. So like on the bike, I came off decent, but I think I was in like 10th place in my age group coming off the bike. And I was like, oh man, I'm never going to get a spot. But then I got on the run and my legs felt fresh and I started picking people off basically as I was going through the run.
really, so you
Yeah.
stayed in your number. That was so Jamie and I did the Hood to Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the Hood to Coast, the 200 miler as a team. And that was one thing. Roadkill was huge as you're going along in the later part of the run. You know,
Yeah.
we're picking off because we'd mark it on the van as far as how many people we'd pick off at the last part of the run. And I'll tell you, everyone that went out fast, you start picking them off
Yep.
significantly at the end.
Yep. It's
Wow.
There is something amazing about knowing your own plan
Yeah.
and then sticking to it in the face of all opposition, whether that opposition is other people competing that you feel like I can take them, or just believing the mental belief in yourself. So that is super. How did you handle times where you must have had runs that or bikes or swims, just times in your training that you're like, why am I doing this? Like,
oh,
how did you keep going during those times when you really started to think, what am I doing here?
So I'll be honest, you have to think of different things that will motivate you, because it is not easy. And there are times where it's literally a grind and you're like, why would I do this? And it gets a little personal, but I have two brothers that have passed away. My
Wow.
oldest, I'm the oldest of six kids in my family. And then I have a sister, and then I have a brother named Tyson. And Tyson was born with a disease called Batten disease. And it's an autosomal recessive genetic disorder. So my mom and dad are both carriers of this gene,
Wow.
and they had died. So both Tyson died, and then after Tyson, I have a brother named Derek, and then after him, I have another brother named Timmy. And both Tyson and Timmy, the TNT bros, we call them, the TNT bros, both had this terrible disease, and they died. And to be honest,
How long? What's their survival? How long do they live for?
yeah, so both lived to just below 30. So the
Okay.
older of the two, Tyson, was almost 30. He was just going to turn 30 when he passed away. And
Okay.
then the other one died just before 30 as well.
And is it a nervous system or is it a what's the
Yeah.
disorder?
So what it is it's actually your body builds up these lipids or fatty cells that will attack. And the first thing it attacks is the optic nerve of the eyes, and it
Also,
just
you go blind.
go blind. So
Wow.
that's actually the first symptom. And at the age of about 5 or 6, they both lost their eyesight and lived for a while just blind. But then unfortunately, that those fatty cells, those lipids build up in the brain and literally destroy the brain. So they go from a completely normal, healthy, functioning child to then blind, to then not even being able to walk or eat or talk on their own, to the point where they unfortunately pass
Wow,
away.
that was probably that's pretty massive in your family. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure
that
all
must
of
have
you are impacted.
huge
Yeah.
Yeah,
impact.
I believe we've all become stronger for it. And
Yeah. Well, in your
uh,
faith, yeah, it had to. I mean, it either
oh yeah,
diminishes your faith or increases your faith. It's one or
right,
the other.
you bet.
Yeah.
And so that was what I found training and doing the Ironman was, I'm like, nothing I'm doing is harder than what my brothers went through.
Okay.
There's nothing I'm doing that's harder than that.
Wow.
And to me, I felt it almost like that was my motivation, where I was going to do something to kind of push my body and myself beyond what to try to even be close to what I feel like my brothers did.
Wow.
And so that was a huge motivation. I literally would draw on that all the time. I would think about, them as well as my parents. And I'd be like, what are my parents going through? This is way easier than anything my parents, I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to compete. But my parents have not, they didn't choose this path. My brothers didn't choose this path, but yet they're forced upon a tough path. And so
Right.
I feel like I can do this. And that was kind of what the driving factor was.
So when so that motivation and oftentimes in many different psychological studies and books and so forth, serving outside yourself is a significant motivation, and in fact, it's almost required if you really do want to go beyond what your normal limits are to be able to serve outside yourself, which is what it sounded like with the TNT brothers. That's what it
Yeah,
sounded like you were serving them.
that's right. That's exactly right. So that was it. And then, of course, I have my own family, my wife and my kids. And I would, you know, I don't know, I would be wrong in saying that I was doing it for them, because it definitely, me doing an Ironman doesn't benefit my family. It doesn't, doesn't help them, I don't think, in any way, other than maybe that they see that I'm doing something that.
I would say I mean, I know that the training itself is just you mainly, because there's not
Yeah.
probably your family with you. Maybe your sons would go with you every once in a while or something like that. But what I see is the inspiration that my father gave to me, and that you then give to your children in regards to having the discipline. I think that's rather significant.
Discipline, and I can do hard things.
Yeah.
Really hard
Right.
things.
I don't know if
Yeah.
any of your children have followed in your footsteps and done an Ironman or anything yet.
Well, yes, actually. And so my oldest son, who actually him and his wife live in Dallas, Texas now, but he competed. He's a professional triathlete. He's a much better triathlete than I ever was.
So I would say you served your
Yeah,
family
I would
quite
say
well
too.
at that point.
Teaching, I mean, if nothing else, teaching what's possible, and then
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I can do that too.
I mean,
That's
I'm
amazing.
inspired. I mean, I already did my run this morning, but I'm inspired to go back out and run again.
After
Yeah,
the floss.
that's awesome. And floss. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's I definitely would use my family and as a motivational tool, and I think they love the fact, like, we did definitely take trips to
Oh
different
yeah.
Yeah.
locations, and include obviously Hawaii, which is where the World Championship was held. My family still to this day. I mean, the last Ironman World Championship I did, by the way, is 2010, and when I did that one, I promised my wife I was done doing Ironman, by the way.
You that was it. You're like, this is the
Yeah.
last one.
Yeah, because it does take a toll. I'll be honest. I mean, I still have I do the same thing. I'm a strong believer in what you say, Jeff, and that is consistency. I worked out this morning. I've already done my run too, and I still run. I still bike. I don't swim as much because my shoulder. I have a bad shoulder right now, but I still try to do something daily as far as physical exercise, and I still work towards different goals. They're not as big. Like, I'm not, like I say, I'm not doing the Ironman, but you do have to kind of find a balance in your life, because you can do something to excess. So even though the streak is good, you could then almost debilitate things. And what I found is that, and actually, a big story of mine that I like to tell my kids when they ask me why I don't do Ironman or anything like that right now, is that there was one time. So I used to take my bike, and while my kids would play lacrosse, and I would sit on the sideline of their lacrosse game with my bike and a trainer, and I would ride my bike the entire time that they were playing lacrosse. Now, my thought was, I'm being a great dad. I'm here watching my kid, and I'm doing, I'm multitasking. I'm also riding my bike, so I'm getting my physical exercise, and I'm watching my son. Well, a year or so after I had finished doing like my Ironman, I was at my son's lacrosse game, and he said to me, "Dad, this was awesome. Today was awesome." And I'm like, "Well, I've come to all your lacrosse games." And he goes, "Yeah, but this time, Dad, you weren't riding your bike." And I go, "Well, I don't."
Why did that make a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says, "Dad, my friends on the lacrosse team used to make fun of the guy riding his bike on the side of the lacrosse field." And I was embarrassed that that's my dad, because they'd be like, "Who is that guy? Who does he think he is?" And here I was thinking that, well, I'm multitasking. And I didn't even realize that my son was getting kind of made fun of because of his dad. And so he kind of made it clear that I was kind of the nerdy dad. I wasn't a cool dad. I was the nerd dad. So
That's the worst.
Yeah, no kidding. You're like, wait a second, I
Wait a
was the cool
minute.
dad.
Are you sure? Something got mixed up there.
I know. So here I am. I'm thinking I'm a great dad, and yet my son has a different perspective. And what I realized very early on is, well, not early on. I wish I would have realized it early on. But what I realized later and since is that there's benefits for sure of doing things like the Ironman. And to say that I did it, I'm very happy I did. And I think we did a lot. That was good. But doing something that like that is also a very selfish thing. You're very much doing things on your own. You're training on your own 20 hours a week. That's 20 hours of your self time. And then you're competing. And so you're doing all of these things. And to be honest, it's pretty selfish too. Now, there's nothing wrong, I don't think. Like, I wouldn't say it's wrong to do those things, but I definitely think that there's a balance. And I realized it mostly because of my wife. I could see the toll it was taking. While I'm out for these long rides, there were days where the kids were having real struggles and I'm riding my bike, and I'm not realizing what my wife's going through at home so that I can be riding my bike for 5 hours, or whatever.
Right.
And so there's goods and bads with everything. So being able to find the balance, and I think I've done that more lately, in my life, is that I still work out daily. I feel like it's very, very important, but I'm not to the quantity that I once was, because I know the effects that can have on my family.
They say that marriage is a marathon. Yours is a triathlon. That's
Yes, for sure.
So just as we finish up here, thank you this has been so invigorating, and you're such an inspirational individual. And thank you also for sharing your personal insights and understanding and what that means to our streaking audience. I mean, the streaking audience is worldwide, and we hear all the time from different people about guests that we have on, and it's really neat to hear your story. Just tell us, as in conclusion, as we finish up here, what is it like to cross the finish line of the World Championship? I mean, I know most of the people will never ever experience that, and I don't know if you can put it into words, but what is it like?
It is seriously awesome. I mean, there is nothing like it. I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard probably that when you cross, the announcer says, they'll say your name, Adam Weaver, you are an Ironman. And it's just this,
I got chills just by you saying that. Adam Weaver, you are an Ironman. I mean, it just makes you feel awesome.
It does. And so there's this feeling that it's just like, wow, it's absolutely amazing. Whether, it takes you 8 hours or it's taking you 12 hours, it doesn't matter. When you cross that line, it is amazing. It is a personal accomplishment that is definitely something I'll never forget. I mean, it's just, it is an amazing, and then to have your family, I mean, it's amazing because you get emotional. Like I got very emotional afterwards. I'd start crying, and my kids, I remember they were little and they'd be like, Dad, why are you crying? And it's just this feeling of, wow, all of this has culminated to this, where you get to cross the finish line, but then to have your family there, and kind of embrace you, it's just it's amazing. The crossing of the finish line is amazing, but that being there with your family, to me, was just that's the icing on
having someone to share all of that with,
yeah,
and be a part of it. That is amazing.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Streakers, we've been on with Dr. Adam Weaver, Mr. Phenomenal. He saved my teeth. He can save yours if you have periodontal disease. If you would like to get more information, can they reach out to you? Can our audience reach out to you and ask questions? And where would they do that?
Yeah, so probably the best way to reach me is to email me. I think that's probably the best way. And my email address is dradam3@comcast.net. And that's DRADAM3@comcast.net. That's probably the best way to reach me for sure. But yeah, I'd love to, I'll answer anybody that were to email me.
That's great. Do you coach anyone have you thought about coaching anyone? Well, your son maybe, but have you coached others?
So I did coach for a little bit after I finished. In 2010, I coached for a couple of years for a couple of athletes, and I've done a little bit of coaching even fairly recently. But no, for the most part, I've decided not to coach anymore at all. And my son, who is a professional triathlete, ran for the BYU National Championship cross country team. He just qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon with a phenomenal race he did in Minnesota.
That's great.
You know, he doesn't need my coaching at all. I mean, but he does get his own coaching, and he coaches people as well. And he's a much better athlete than I ever was.
Well, I think you inspired him, definitely. You've inspired us, and you've inspired our audience. So thank you very much. Streakers, if you'd like to reach out to Jami or I, ask us questions, you can do so at Jeffrey, Jeffery, at streakingmastery.com, or
Jami at Jami at streakingmastery.com.
If you'd like to learn how to start streaking and set up the floor of your streaks to one day be an Ironman triathlete, you can order the book from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or anywhere books are sold. That's Streaking, Streaking, or you can download the app, which it's the Streaking app. It's the social media platform for self-improvement. You can see all kinds of people's streaks and what they say about them. Again, it's the Streaking app at Google Play or the Apple App Store. Until we talk again,
keep streaking.
A better you.